I was about to forget you.
Pastor trying to jump the gun on me here. He's raring to go. If you would, turn in your Bibles to Revelation chapter 19. And I'll be reading verses 11 through 16. And I'll be reading from the New King James Version. And he who sat on him was called. Eyes were like flames of fire. Written on, and dipped in blood, and his name. And the armies white and clean. Out of his mouth goes a and he himself will rule, treads the winepress. He has on his robe, King of Kings and
Thank you, Bill. Words that ML just read for us. Picture that most people had of Jesus. That was the focus. But we want King. He's King of the universe. And yet he was willing to come on others and circumstances. I want to look at the kings. Now, who were you? Now, after days of Herod the king, where is he who has been born King of the Jews? Him. Who were these guys anyway? Did they have lots? To the Romeo application into retired old men eating out into the club yet, but I'm aiming to go that way. In the east, they loaded up their ships of the desert. Arabian equines, dressed up in their origins, who they were, how many were in the caravan. They were. Matthew says the thing that was most to worship him. Let's remember that, because that's us in our journey, isn't it? So that's a point in your favor. The God of heaven. And as we seek him to worship. In fact, Jesus said, seek ye shall find. These wise men, but they were attending. God's light is penetrating and shining, and it's going. There's a great revival going on about 3 weeks ago. From an over in Muslim areas. I'm trying, which includes these guys who are from probably. God has no limits on where he sheds. Not just in this country. And looking, they looked up. That would be exciting, wouldn't it? Announcing the incarnation. These men far away, light, and they looked at it and they said, what is God? If you follow, my little, she was a pain in my like the cat, Jerry, you need to come to prayer meeting. Yeah. But church most times didn't have a car, like 4 or 5 miles. When we were up in there, that church where it is, and then all the way over to, if you go up to the top of the, used to be over on Clark's Creek, and those folks would get up and hike that. How hard was it for you to get to church this? Yeah. These gentlemen had the similar encounter. Gives us light, and if we follow it, do you believe in what about God? And I said, you know what? And he does that well. New births today, and I've got to assign angels and take care of all those. His responsibility is to reach to you and me, grow and get bigger. That's his. My part is to give him a chance. Just to give him a little room. Don't just kick him away to the curb too quick before you say, well, that. Give God a chance. And he'll show you some exciting things. These men saw that and they said, yeah, let's follow that path. And they kept their eyes on the light. What would have happened if they hadn't went on about their activity of their existence? So they up supplies, journey, because I believe there were more than just 3 of them. Plus, there weren't too many Walmarts or Denny's along the way. 1,500 pounds, he's going to be eating some stuff. And so they were preparing for this journey, and as they were, how long are you going to be gone? Well, King of the Jews, we think. How many specificity on that? I'd like to know. Then it got a little clearer. They had every knew math, they knew astronomy, and they had them all charted. What's going on? And it's behaving sometimes. They looked at that and then said, we have some writings here from the guy who used to be the first president of our whole country. Who was that? Good old brother Daniel. And they looked at a prophecy, I think. I can't prove this, so this might be heresy. But if it is, it's well-intentioned. Of course, so is most heresy. Even though I'm here for the money. If we had more preachers like that, Numbers 24. I behold him, but he's not near. A scepter shall rise out of Israel. Who were clearly students. Daniel, Shadrach, of Persia. Over in Daniel chapter 9. Prophecy, and they said, as they looked at it, the prophecy was at that point. And they looked at this prophecy in chapter 9. They could have looked at the 2,300. The transgression. To make vision and prophecy and to anoint the restore and build Jerusalem to Messiah the shall be rebuilt, and so on. They sat down and calculated it out. Yeah, I mean, what else do you do when you don't have a computer or TV? They're sitting there, well, let's see, we've charted all the stars. Something new has happened. Here are the writings from our good leaders, Daniel and his friends, who God brought into the country, and there's still some Jews here among us. They studied this out, and they said, let's go. What does this show us? God has a plan, doesn't he? God has a plan. Even before these men came along, 600 years previous, God's people had to go into captivity. They had ignored God's plan for them, and they went over and spent 70 years in Babylon. And God said, that's okay, because I'm bringing here a message for them, for the people who will come. This is not just about a little trouble right here and right now. This is a cosmic struggle. God, since the beginning, has promised a Messiah, and he has continued to make that plan known to us, and he makes it known to whoever will seek and listen and to observe. And so these men had a lot of evidence, but they wanted to go and see it for themselves. And that brings us back to Matthew 2. Down in verse 3. They've come after Jesus was born, and they said, where is the King of the Jews? We've come to worship. Then Herod the king heard these things, and he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And when he had gathered all the chief priests and the scribes together, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. So they said to him, in Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it is written by the prophet, but to you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are not the least among the rulers of Judah, for out of you shall come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel. Why were they troubled? These wise men had shown up from the east, and of all the places they could land, they landed in Jerusalem. To them, that seemed like the logical place to go. Herod and the priests are there, the royalty and the religiosity, but no one truly serving God. Not at all like what these folks had been reading. They've been studying the writings, they've been looking at the stars, God's giving them signs, and they've just made a travel journey, probably hundreds of miles, and they arrive in Jerusalem, and what's going on? Herod the king, who is by lineage, by blood, associated with the Jewish religion, what's he interested in? Mostly he's interested in himself and in his position as king. He was a great builder, restored the temple, built some other beautiful things. His Jewish heritage and his friendship with the Caesars. He knew the Caesar, he knew Mark Antony. These were folks that he hung out with, and they said, Herod, we're going to give you over this nice land over here, some of your family. You rule them and keep them under control if you can. Herod said, I'll be glad to do it, and I'll do it at all costs because I am the greatest. Do you know this song? My father used to sing this song. Oh Lord, it's hard to be humble when you're perfect in every way. That's a terrible song. Never sing that song. Herod used to sing that song often. He was ruthless in his peacekeeping, even with his family. He killed 3 of his sons and at least 1 of his 10 wives. That's how much he thought of himself. And when he heard that there was going to be a new king, a new deliverer, that people would follow instead of him, people who would go after this other guy, would take them in a different way, he needed to find out. And he said, no, that's not going to happen. The priests and the scribes, who were supposed to be the protectors and the promoters of God's word, what were they doing? They were part of the system, and they were just sitting around enjoying whatever they could do to make plans to overthrow Rome and continue to wait for the Messiah who would lead them to be the greatest. They knew the truth. How well do you and I know truth? Yeah, we know it pretty well, don't we? But what's the most important truth to know? Here were people who were running the country, who knew all about money and tithing, who were clear on diet, what was clean and unclean, who even kept the Sabbath. But they didn't have the essence. They weren't celebrating the birth of the one that all of these things were pointing to. Many of us can know and look at the truth. We just don't want to let it touch me and change my life. Well, that looks nice. That's really good. I have a lot of respect for that. But God says, let's make a change. Maybe there'd be a little improvement in my lifestyle. They wanted the scepter. They wanted the ruler. They wanted politics and popularity, but they didn't want anything personal to happen. When Jesus got older and began his ministry, he said things like, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Search and seek for Jesus. You'll find him even in discouraging circumstances. These men, if it had been me, I would have been tempted at that point to say, wow, Herod's here and he looks a little like he's got something else on his mind besides just worshiping the Messiah. Scribes and Pharisees who know the prophecies, and they've even told us where to go and look next, but no one seems to be rejoicing. I mean, this kid has been around for weeks and months, but where is he? Might it be time to go home, right? Say, let's load up the camels and head back to the east. Verse 7, Matthew 2. Then Herod, when he had secretly called the wise men, determined from them what time the star appeared. Did some calculations, and he sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and search diligently for the young child. When you have found him, bring word back to me that I may come and worship him also." When they heard the king, they departed. And behold, the star which they had seen in the east went before them till it came and stood over where the young child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceedingly great joy. Herod says, "Go and search." Just when they're wondering if this is time to go home, Herod says, "Well, go and search for him, and if you find him, bring word back to me." Why would Herod do that? Of course, he wanted to find out about this kid, because even in his day, a kid could be anointed as king of the country, and his protectors would make that happen. So he said, "Bring me word back, and I'm going to go and get rid of this kid," he's saying to himself, "and I'm going to have to eliminate you guys too." Oh, you got to get rid of the witnesses, right? Herod's thinking this, and these guys are wondering if it's time to go home. The priests are kind of trying to be neutral, but you can't be neutral in the fight with the enemy, can you? You think you can stand for a little while, but you can't. You have to take a stand sooner or later. So the wise men decide to continue their quest. And as they head out towards Bethlehem, great reinforcement. The star comes. Isn't it good? When you're in a discouraging moment, it looks like, boy, what am I doing here? I thought this was a good thing I'm doing, this journey I'm on, following where God leads. And now some of the people that I thought were going to be the most help to me are not really turning out to be that greatest help. Has that ever happened? Don't raise your hands. Yeah, that can happen, can't you? You say, well, boy, if I'm going here, this is going to be heaven. When I went off to academy, Garden State Academy, I thought, boy, this is great. I'm going to go to a place where they study the Bible and they have, religious events every day at school and all of that. And I said, this is going to be great. This will be like going to heaven. And it was for me. But then I had a funny thing happen. They said, you're going to be pastor of the class and of the SA, the Student Association. And I said, really? Okay. What makes that? They said, because you study your Sabbath school lesson and say your prayers beside your bed every night. And I thought, really? I thought everybody did that. If I didn't do that, Grandma would get me. And Mama would help her. And I had to learn my memory verses so that I could recite all 13 of them every 13th Sabbath. Can you do that? I always hated it when we had memory verses from Isaiah. Isaiah's long. Sometimes you end up in a place that's not exactly what you thought, but you keep going. And God will give you light, and He'll show you where He wants you to go because He's leading you. He's leading you. And so they follow the light. More light came. They got to Bethlehem. And here we begin to see the gathering of the kings and the power. Here are kings and wise men from the east. Here's King Herod. Here are leaders of the country. And here's the enemy of souls. All focused on this baby and what to do with him. What does Lucifer want to do? Lucifer wants to wipe him out. He's working through Herod as an agent. The disregard and the lukewarmness of the religious leaders, he's causing that and facilitating that. Here's a group of evangelists with 3 gifts from a foreign country to come in and bring the message. And what do they get when they get closer to Bethlehem? They hear rumors from shepherds. Shepherds? The king of the country, the religious leaders of the country are kind of, But shepherds are excited because they had seen the same star, hadn't they? And some of the villagers, I think, said, yeah, go down this street over here. That's where he was born. And even though weeks, maybe months have gone by, they show up because God's leading. And they're determined to have God's blessing. Verse 11. And when they had come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary his mother. And what did they do? Everything they've been through, all this travel, all of these interactions, they fall down and worship him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented gifts to him: gold, frankincense, and myrrh. What an interesting place to worship God. Here's the God of the universe who comes to the most humble place imaginable. And he's there with his parents. And these guys show up. Now, what would you do? Ladies, you're in the hospital room. You've just had a baby. And all of a sudden, these guys come in with robes like sheiks. And they come in and say, oh, we came to see the baby. Call hospital security. What? How did they get in? They show up there, and Mary and Joseph, who are already in tune with God, God said this is the plan. And these guys show up and say, this is the king. You're in the right place. And do they say, well, what country are you from? What religion are you? We've come to worship the king. We're all equal when we come to worship God, aren't we? It doesn't matter. God says, come, worship me, and we follow that. And so they presented gifts. Now, what gift would you bring to a king? Well, this probably made him feel better because he's in a stable, and they said, well, the gifts will be good. But they brought 3 of the most expensive gifts of their time. These were not just casual gifts. These were, Bill Gates gifts. They were way up there. And they brought them to this young man. And what's Jesus going to do with them? He's laying there just thinking about when Mary's going to feed him again. Mary and Joseph accept the gifts. So what gift do we bring? What's the purpose of the gift? There's an old tale of a young girl named Jasmine. Jasmine wanted to know what gift to give to her list of people that she loved so much. And she asked Grandma, what can I give them? Grandma said, give them the gift of the wise man. And Jasmine thought for a minute. She said, really? Wow, they got rich gifts. Grandma said, we don't have money. How am I going to give a rich gift to my relatives? She said, Jasmine, think about this. What did the wise men really bring? What could you really give to those on your list? She said, well, she thought about that. Grandma, I guess I could pray for them. I guess I could encourage them. And so she took letters and cards and cut out pictures of things that she wanted to give them, but she put on there, I'm praying for you, and one day we'll all have the greatest gift of all. And I'm praying for you every week at this time and this place. And she began to give that out. Was that the gift? The gift of prayer, the gift of love, the gift of devotion. That's what the wise men gave, wasn't it? They had lots, but they said, what's all this stuff without a purpose, without the king? And so we ask ourselves this time of year, what gift do we bring to the king? What devotion, what dedication? Will it be what you got or what you gave that makes Christmas memorable? What stories the wise men had when they made the journey home. God came and said, don't go back to Herod. He'd been leading, and he'll do the same for us. Go home, share your message. Joseph and Mary, you need to leave town. Go to Egypt. God is directing us, isn't he? What stories we'll have to tell, and one of these days when Revelation 19 is fulfilled. Won't that be exciting? We won't go to worship a little baby somewhere. We won't go to just any place. We're now waiting for him. We're like Joseph and Mary. We're like the wise men. We're on a journey. We've been to see the king. We come to see the king, but we're not home yet. And God says, you're going to be home soon. You're going to be home soon. And what stories we're going to share when we get back home. Just keep following the light. Keep looking at the star. And we'll be home soon. Let's sing a song together. Hymn number 137. Stand with me, please. We three kings of Orient are, bearing gifts we traverse afar, field and fountain, moor and mountain, following yonder star.